Welcome to Spill the Booch. This is the show where we share wild, hilarious, and also relatable stories from the yoga and wellness world because let's be real, it isn't always as zen as it seems. I'm Mara, and I'm here with my team of wellness biz superstars and coaches. We have Carol, Josh, Terry, and our newest team member, Bridget, here for the ride today. Together, we're diving into stories that make you laugh, cringe, and say, yep, that's so studio life. So grab your coffee, kombucha, or your favorite drink, and let's dive in. In a recent Reddit post titled Yoga Horror Story, Would You Complain? User Lavender Acid recounts a horrific experience at a vinyasa yoga class. Expecting a standard instructor-led session, as you would, attendees were left unsupervised to follow a disjointed video featuring inconsistent sequences and confusing instructions. So before we dive in, I have this question for you guys. Imagine walking into a yoga class and only finding a TV screen instead of a teacher. What's your first move? Do you stay? Do you leave? Do you start playing your own background music? What do you do? Josh?
Isn't this a brand called Yoga Box or
Hot box or something? That's different because when you're going in, that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
right?
I'm assuming this means is that they're expecting a live instructor class and they show up and it's a video recording.
Trick
that's
ya,
exactly what
curveball. I would send a complaint email and I would fully expect the response to be, hey, yogis have to be flexible, things change.
Set
Or
an
like
autoresponder so you
an
don't
autoresponder that just gaslights me
Yeah.
immediately. No, it's gonna be that kind of show, you guys. No, what would I do? Honestly,
I'd
I would
leave.
just do the class. I would shut up and do the class.
I would do the class. I'd be mad about it.
Yeah.
I'd be annoyed. Well, it depends. It could be really good.
Depends on how good the class was, I guess. The number of times, look, like I hate that we always end up talking about fucking Bikram yoga, but the number of times OG Bikram yoga, you'd throw the CD in, it wasn't even a video, and
What's
just
a
do the
CD?
class.
How old are you, Josh?
Yeah, well, exactly. The amazing part was to this day, it would require a CD player. Or other recorded classes, you just listen to the class. And now that's the nature of that class or whatever and do it. The class sucks versus having an instructor, of course.
Yeah.
And you're already there. I don't know. That's what I would do. Personally, would
I
I
already
be
showed
annoyed
up.
by it though? In 2025, if unannounced I rolled in and did that, yes, I would feel like that's unprofessional.
Cancel the class.
I would expect the class to have been canceled or me to have been warned.
A warning would definitely be warranted. Well, let's go to the story. This morning, I booked into a vinyasa class. It was advertised as a normal class, nothing at all to suggest otherwise. I show up, and me and a few other people are waiting around for the teacher. A staff member walks into the room, puts on some recording of around 10 people doing yoga, and then leaves. Nobody is asked about injuries, and the entire class is left completely unsupervised to follow along to the video. Now, in my many years of practicing, I have never seen a video like this. They started with what they called sun salutations, in quotations, because those are a mysterious thing, apparently.
Quotable.
I practice Ashtanga daily. I've gone to many different types of classes over the years, and the sun salutations have always remained pretty much the same. This class, I couldn't get into the flow because they weren't actually doing sun salutations. Instead, it went prayer pose, upward salute, forward fold, step back to lunge, warrior one, step back to prayer, upward salute, forward fold, step back to lunge, then down into child's pose, plank, through staff pose, upward facing dog, downward facing dog, child's pose, and then clumsily stand back up and repeat.
That's not sun salutation.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Bridget, you're vinyasa trained. Does that sound like a sun salutation to you?
No, but in vinyasa, sun salutation just means whatever. It doesn't really have a strong meaning either way. This reminds me of my worst yoga stress dream, which is that I leave the class and never come back because I keep getting distracted and everybody is left unsupervised for the entire thing. I get it about once a month. It's just extreme stress.
Yeah.
Oh man, we always have those stress streams, all of us. They're the worst.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a little bit more to this story. After a while of this, then we did just to flower pose to warrior three, then a couple of seated twists. Every sequence was interrepeated by the video telling us to move our mats to different angles. And by the end of the class, everyone was pointing in different directions all over the place and doing different moves. They didn't say what side you were meant to be on, and a couple of the sequences weren't repeated on the other side of the body. The video was, for some reason, led by each different person, so every few moves they'd cut into a different instructor. This was wildly confusing, and they kept changing the camera angle and jumping around, so you didn't actually know which way to face. At one point, the instructor got into what was called joyful plow pose, but was quite blatantly just pigeon pose. They then finished the class not with savasana, but with the fucking splits. Now, there'd be next to no leg warm up aside from the couple bits I've already mentioned. There was nobody supervising, so just a few people tried to drop into the splits like the instructor and looked like they hurt themselves. I can do the splits, but even I wouldn't have been able to get into them with that minimal of a warm up. After plonking everybody down into a split, that was it. Class over, no cool down. The video just ended. I have no idea where they found this video, but it was genuinely shocking. I got the sense the instructors may have been dancers, lots of flexibility and strength, but they didn't seem at all like they knew anything about yoga. Pair it with this blasting electronic music, and it was far the worst class I've been to, by about a mile. Has anyone else shown up to a class and it been virtual? Would you complain? I didn't pay anything for the class because of my gym membership, but I may as well have stayed home and followed a decent YouTube video. Initial reactions?
I would be bad. I think that if, Josh's point, if it wasn't advertised as that, and if the instructor wasn't available, then you at least say something, and this is what we're going to do. But that's just, to me, that's just incredibly poor customer service. I would have been PO'd. And I even, again, we always talk about we always talk about Bikram, that I would get upset. I didn't like it when the instructor would come in. This is before I became a teacher, and even after I became a teacher, the instructor would come in, and usually it was like 6:30 a.m. class, and they go, "Do you mind if I practice with you?" That always pissed me off too, because it's like, no, and of course nobody's going to say no. Everybody's going, "Oh, sure." It's like people paid it. Anyway, I would say very poor form. I would never go back. I might have even left. I don't know if I would.
I would say the last sentence of this being at a gym, knowing, because I used to go to a big gym and they had a fitness studio, a spin studio, and a yoga studio. And you could go in and do virtual classes whenever you wanted if the studios were empty, or you could join the actual lead classes. So the fact that this was happening in a gym, that does take a lot away, not saying it's okay, but taking a lot of it away on the staff, because these staff members are usually 16 to 20-year-olds just working front desk at a gym, and teachers probably aren't getting paid very much to teach a class at a big gym like that. And there's not a lot of protocol that they would be trained on for that
All
situation.
the more reason to go to a boutique yoga studio.
Exactly. If you want a good yoga class,
Let's go to
a yoga studio. That's
moral of the story.
Yeah, totally. Actually, my first vinyasa class was at that gym, and it was not great.
Mysterious Carol, what do you think?
Well, my initial thought, I'd be sitting there thinking, is this an April Fool's joke? Am I getting punked? Are there cameras around here? I would do the class and just think that the whole time. Somebody is punking me. This is not right. Because the only time that I remember a teacher saying, the studio that I grew up in Dallas, they were wildly busy. Everyone wanted a 6 a.m. class. And the owner finally put one on. And the first day she went in and put the CD on. And then she walked in 5 minutes later and was like, just kidding. Not that long. But she was just like, this is a joke, right? That's my initial thought. This is crazy.
Oh my gosh. It is pretty crazy. So as for staff training, Josh always says that staff management is the one thing that most yoga studio owners don't realize they're getting into when they sign up for opening a studio. So what would training your staff look like in this situation? How would you coach a studio owner or tell a yoga studio owner if something like this was happening in their studio? How would you coach around this? What advice would you guys give?
What would you train to the staff?
How would you coach your studio owner to handle this happening in their studio if their teachers are not showing up?
Hire their
Different
asses
question.
and hire better ones.
Pretty much.
Easier said than done,
I
Terry.
thought you were asking how to train the staff. I would say
Well,
you have to
yeah,
train the staff like, here, this is a CD. You got to push this button. There's no way they know how to do that right now. Terry's reaction is fast. And here's what Bridget says. I guess it depends. We don't have the backstory in, right? What happened? Was this some emergency thing? And this is the Band-Aid they went with. And it's like, at least they fucking committed to it. And we're like, screw it, stick them in there and put the video on.
Yeah.
I respect that. I think it's shitty, but there's a communication missing piece here. I think that if this was a surprise thing and that was not a protocol that I had put in place as the owner, then I would obviously immediately address this, emergency level immediately. I would get an apology to the students. And then I don't know, depending on the relationship with the instructor, they might actually be fired over this. I generally have a 3-strike rule, but that's insane. The idea that you can carte blanche just take such a huge shift in what the product is. Like, that's how you debrand a studio fast.
Totally.
This is just so out of the realm of anything I can't imagine. First of all, we don't have the technology at my studio.
Don't
that's
have a CD
just
player.
like pop on a CD or anything. And I think that if this was out of nowhere, honestly, that would give me red flags about the relationship that the studio owner has set up with all of their staff members in the first place. To me, this seems like an overall issue of you don't have protocols, you have wishy-washy boundaries. A lot of times I see studio owners, one of the sort of categories of questions that comes up is, what do you say to a staff member who tells you they want to do this? And I'm like, what's your rule about that? And then just tell them that rule. What do you say to us? Someone said this recently in a group I'm in. What do you say to a staff member who wants to cancel the class if there's only one person? And it's just like, the issue isn't what do you want? What is the protocol?
Yeah.
And then why are they asking to change the protocol? Or do they not know the protocol? Yeah. So all of this would give me actually bigger red flags about the studio owner themselves than the staff member. So those are my 2 cents.
Preach, you're hired.
Great.
Policy.
Exactly. I was just on a call with a client yesterday, and there was an issue about something. The owner was upset about it and what they should do. And I said, well, have you told, what's the policy? She said, well, I said, that's exactly your point, Bridget. It is incumbent upon you as the owner of the studio to set the policies. And then it doesn't mean that policies have to be carved in stone, because I don't know about you, but certainly sometimes some of my policies are like, oop, that wasn't such a great idea. But at least have a semblance of the policies, communicate them. And then if there's friction and someone else comes up with a better idea, it's like, hey, I did this and I think this could be a better solution to that. And being open to those solutions if they make sense, so that it's not like, well, hashtag Terry's dad, my way or the highway, right? So it can be something where if you're not sure, you try it and say, hey, we're going to give this a try. Let me know how it works. We might need to adjust, but it's like, if it's just the wild, wild west, then guess what? You're going to get the wild, wild west.
I was just going to echo all of this. The simplified thought that's coming to my head is just, this is that idea of get to the actual problem. This is a symptom. That's what Bridget's saying. This is a symptom of an actual problem. 50% of the battle, in terms of what do we coach people towards, 50% of the battle is clearly identifying and articulating the actual problem. So the real question isn't why does this student do this, or how did this happen with this class? The question is like, how is it possible that this could ever happen within the system of how my business operates? And no shade either. When some weird shit will happen and you'll fix it, you'll put a policy in place, and you 5 years from now would look back and literally laugh at the scenario. Like, can't believe that was a possibility. That's okay, but just that's the real question there, I think.
All right, well, let's check out some of the comments because they're pretty entertaining. So first comment that's gotten 353 upvotes. In regards to a video, nope. I would immediately demand my money back, kindly, but not paying to watch a video. In regards to the flow, there is no real right way in a typical vinyasa. I too take primarily Ashtanga classes, but enjoy flow and yin also. They are two different and very different. And I've had some flow classes move into dance and other similar movement scenarios. Someone else commented, I want to see this video. It sounds bonkers with the popcorn emoji. Someone else commented, it legit sounds sinister. Like if David Lynch made a yoga video, cue, sometimes my arms bend backwards. I finally broke down cackling at the bit about finishing with the fucking splits. I am currently working on my full splits and I'm keenly aware how advanced it is and that it really matters how warmed up you are. In this video, while not worth practicing to, might be a great watch with popcorn. Another really popular comment, aside from the sequencing, odd to me anyways, I would absolutely complain if it was not advertised as a virtual class. I would never pay to take a virtual class in a studio, especially if I was a beginner. I take classes several times per week, and there are people who often need help from the instructor. I can't imagine how this studio thought it was going to work if no one else was, or no one was supervising. Very true. Everybody's just laughing about the splits. I'm sorry, but I actually giggled at how disastrous that class sounds, especially finishing off with some nice relaxing splits. I'd be giving some well-deserved feedback to the gym. This sounds like a social experiment.
I do actually think the funniest part about all of it is that not only did they panic and were like, let's put a video on, but they chose this terrible.
The worst possible.
Like, if that did ever happen, which it absolutely would not in my life, I would have picked the best. You would have at least had to be like good class, but it sounds like it was a YTT and training thing with like multiple people.
This is what's not supposed to happen in a vinyasa class. It's probably what the video was. Nobody is having anything positive to say about this video in the comments. Oh my goodness. So to follow up with all of this, have you guys had anything, not necessarily video or virtual related, but when you go to a studio, what you do or what would you do if a class wasn't as advertised? How would you respond? Because that's a common thing that happens. Josh?
I've done a couple of videos in the YC private group about this throughout the years, because it's actually a thing that happens where I am here notoriously. And especially because with schedule, it's very much that the majority of the yoga classes here are scheduled for the tourist and not for the local who actually lives here and has a schedule like kids in school. And so it can be hard to get your classes scheduled and stuff appropriately. So it makes it double bad that you move things around and get there for an 11 a.m. class or whatever else. And it's supposed to be Vinyasa Flow Level 2. And then it's like yin and flow with a different instructor. And the first posture is we're going to lie on our backs with the block in your thoracic. And as a stiff dude, that's not where my body starts. It makes me very annoyed when that happens. So I always take the class in terms of what would I do. But I think where my mind goes is obviously, I think that this should actually be communicated to the owners of the studio. The asterisk on that is like here, I know the owners of all the studios. They don't give a shit. You can communicate anything you want. They won't even respond. They won't hear it. You could sell it to their face and they would literally just stare at you and then move on. There is no even sense of being heard at all. So I don't know what my point is in with that. I would be annoyed is what would happen. But I feel like there's a good lesson on what not to do in that.
I would say one of my pet peeves is when the class description doesn't match what the class being taught is, and that happens a lot more than people think. And so that's when I'm leaving Google reviews, I will say that straight up in the review and just say, hey, the class they described wasn't the class I took. And I know this happens in Vinyasa, and now that we have a Vinyasa coach that grew up in Vinyasa world, we have to be a little more moderate in what we say about Vinyasa. But one of my biggest pet peeves is when the teacher walks in and say, what do you want to work on today? Because that just, to me, I mean, I see Bridget shaking her head. To me, that just means they haven't prepared a class. And that just like bothers me. But also it goes to, in terms of coaching. And again, I've been spending a lot of time with clients lately about what are your class descriptions? And is everybody sticking to these class descriptions? because this is your brand. It's not a vinyasa, it's a yoga thing. So it's part of your brand. And if you've built up your brand and then in the wild, wild west, it's just not so great. And I've been to studios where it is the wild west. You don't know what you're going to expect. The classes don't match and they don't really care. That's different. But if you care, and then the other thing, and I see this a lot, is letting the instructors tell you what type of class they want to teach and what the name of it is. Because yesterday I went with reviewing class descriptions with a client, and they have Ven and Yin, which has become real popular, half a vinyasa flow and then half a Yin class. And then they had slow Yin. And I was like, how much slower can Yin get? Right? If Yin is already slow. And she looked at me, she went, oh, I know. What it is it's a slow flow vinyasa with, and I'm like, what is the difference? And she stared at me and I went, here's the litmus test. If someone asks you to tell you, if you say, what is this class? And you can, as the owner, immediately say, that's what this class is and that's who it's for, then you've got a problem. So now she said, well, that's what the teacher wanted to call it. I said, no. I said, why don't you just make it a Ven and Yin class, which are very popular at her studio. So she's gonna, I said, you tell the instructor, you don't ask the instructor. At least we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. When you say Vin and Yin, I think wine and
I know.
Immediately I'm like, ooh, that sounds like a wonderful class. I'd love to go. Yeah. But this whole situation just reminds me of, actually, I went to a yoga class yesterday and I went with my girlfriend who's never done a yoga class before, except for I took her to a yin class at a different studio a few days prior. So that was her only experience with yoga. And she's a hardcore CrossFitter. And it was the CrossFit gym that organized this special class. It was just for CrossFit people. And it was they said it was a power flow class and whatever. And she was like, so what should I expect? And I'm like, I don't know. I can tell you it's going to be, because it's a power flow, it's going to be a little bit hard. It's going to be quite hard. But because you guys are all CrossFitters, she's probably going to do something a little more intense. However, they should know that there's people who have never done yoga before, so I don't really know. And when the teacher walked into the class, she immediately was like, do you guys want to work on legs or shoulders? And she got us all to close our eyes and we raised our hands so like nobody actually knew what we were going to work on, which was a little bit better. And we immediately regretted our decision because we did clearly chose shoulders. But we started with abs and eagle arm abs. I didn't even know that was a thing. It was super fun. And then we went in and we did these plank down to forearm plank, but it went on forever. 2 songs. We were doing it for 2 songs. I was like, and my friend's looking at me and was like, what is this? And I'm like, I don't even know. And then the rest of the class was really good and like really hard flow and it was good. And then at the end, she was just like, so what was that? I don't know if I liked that. It was really hard. That was not a beginner's class at all, but it was interesting. So that's like super advanced fit vinyasa. There was a lot of up, down, bear to plank and anyways. Carol, what are your thoughts?
It sounds like the teacher was sort of trying to cater in a way to the CrossFitters and make it intense.
Totally.
So I can understand where they were coming from, I think, but it's tricky. I've been to classes too, where it's like, I think I told you guys the story. I was going for a hot vinyasa class. The teacher was like, is it okay if I turn the heat off today? And 2 people were like, turn it off. And I'm just like, no, that's why I'm not going to say anything. But it was one of those things where it doesn't match. What am I to do the next time? Do I trust you or not?
Definitely loses a lot of trust.
I find it really fascinating, and I literally mean fascinating. It's just something to note how yoga keeps morphing through the years. Bear pose and bear walks, that didn't exist in yoga until maybe 10 years ago. It probably did somewhere, but not really. It wasn't a thing. And then there's this huge wave of animalistic movement gets popular, and then mobility instead of flexibility is uptrend even now still. And that's all really great. And so like, it infiltrates and just molds into what the yoga classes are. which is cool, actually, because who's to say what is or isn't yoga? I don't think that that's way too opinionated to actually answer. But with that comes full circle this whole thing. What is your product? If you're a studio owner or even an instructor who's going to travel and instruct at CrossFit gyms, what is that class? Because if you just say power flow, that doesn't mean anything anymore. So it doesn't need a fancy name, but the describer of it and where that conversation starts, to Carol's point with like trying to facilitate a class that they assume is good for people who like CrossFit and making it intense that way, to what end? What is the end result of your class? What's the purpose of it? And I think that's the part that I see being missed, that's insinuated in all these conversations. Even the playing the video with the class being all weird. It's weird because for what purpose? Was that all warm up to do the splits? but then didn't have any warm up for the splits. Doesn't sound like it. So that's the question to ask in my mind for any teacher or any studio out there is what is the product and then what's the purpose of the specific class? If you can just get that dialed in, then at least you're selling people what it is. And
Exactly.
then they can like it or not like it. That doesn't really matter. You can be totally not attached to that.
I agree. The description, and maybe it's just because we're in this industry and we see this so often. So it is something that I look at more closely and I know what I like and I know what I want to go to. And it is disappointing, especially you're paying money and making the effort of going there. And in my case, because I'm super lazy when it comes to driving, the yoga studios are far away. It's over half an hour to get to that studio that's hot and does have the better classes. But if I'm making all that effort and then I go there and it's not what is advertised, it's very frustrating as the student. And so you want your people to come back.
Hey, I would add to this class descriptions conversation that there's this really fun type of class description that is pretty common. I would say it's gotten better throughout the years, but like probably 75% of class descriptions out there, if you just go randomly check studios, are like this, where the instructor themselves has invented the class and then written the description. And they're trying to be a poet in writing it, like a yoga poet. So you're going to leave the class with the zenny sense of self through the discovery of synchronized breath with the movement of the vinyasa, also known as Surya, coming down from the lineage of Shri, and you're like, so what kind of class is it? Because all that stuff's cool, but I always think of in marketing, we talk, yeah, spiritual babble, Bridget says. I always think in marketing, we talk about how clarity wins. You can be clear or you can be witty. If you're exceptional, you can be both, but most people can't. And if you want to know which one's going to win in the marketing sense, clear is going to win. I think that class descriptions are the lowest bar, easiest marketing thing that you can get fucking dialed that makes your studio awesome. You could run ads about your classes by the description. You could make the pages better. You could make content on it. You could promote it in videos. Like it's just, there's so much content creation and marketing of your studio and differentiation of your studio by making class descriptions really good. Because the studio down the street could offer the same exact class, but if you can describe yours better so that I'm clear what yours is, I'll go to you, even if it's literally the same class.
And also call the thing, right? So if it is a vinyasa flow class, it's okay to call it a vinyasa flow class. And then in your descriptor, if you have some special secret sauce or flavor to it, you put it there, but or call it a power vinyasa class. It's sometimes when you have these just ludicrous names, what the hell? And I do that a lot with newer clients. I look on and I'm like, what is this?
Or they have like 15 different class types.
Oh yeah, and
they're all named different things, but it's all like literally different variations of a power flow class or something like that. It gets really confusing. Which one am I gonna get today? Because then not all of those 15 classes are on the schedule either.
It's just clarity, as Josh said, clarity and just quick. And again, going way back, we've talked about this a lot, is the curse of knowledge, right? Bridget, you said the spiritual speak. The Sanskrit names, all of this kind of stuff. First off, they're long, most people can't pronounce them. And remember, people are looking at your website and your classes on what? Their mobile device. So you have these really long ass words. It's like short, simple bullet points. Boom. Yes, I want to do that thing.
Totally.
The only case where you need 37 classes on your website is from an SEO perspective, and that's not even true anymore because
Good.
SEO is so fucking massively changed because of AI. That's still not even true. So there's no other advantage. But what is spiritual babble?
Just like what you were saying, or we talk a lot about it in the context of teaching, when you're just teaching a class or you're in a class and then suddenly the teacher is talking about like, blossoming your third chakra into oblivion, and my heart will open to your heart, and all of this just, oh my God, there is so much happening here right now. And we talk a lot about in YTT that with my teachers that I train is, like Terry just said, the curse of knowledge. I am a big proponent of having a very clear, very singular intention for a class. And I actually think it's a really important part of class. I want there to be an intention, but you have so much knowledge about all the chakras and emotional and spiritual development. And so to you, it's no big deal to just like throw out the word surrender or talk about Manipura chakra or whatever. But to everyone else, that's really confusing and isolating, I think, for a lot of people. It makes people feel like, am I even supposed to be here? Just let them chew on this one intention, like feeling more joy in their practice. And then don't talk about any other things. And certainly don't go on a monologue about all of these obscure topics. So that's what spiritual babble is.
Our last Spill the Booch, we talked about yoga as a cult because that was one of the things. And this is one of the conditions of cultism, is having your own language inside the cult. And so the fact that what you're just saying, Brigitte, that's isolating is exactly the point of that. That's what cults do, is they're trying to isolate you. So by doing that, it's not saying you have a cult, but it's like you're acting towards cult creation, which is why we can go on Reddit and find someone being like, yoga's a cult, or one of the reasons. There's obviously more. There's certainly some culty behavior there, but
Other than the babble.
I would say one of the best vinyasa classes I took was, and I'm going to give her a shout out, Heather Sheridan, one of our clients. And it was one of the best vinyasa classes I've ever taken. And because she did exactly, Bridget, what you said, what you train your teachers, very succinct, clear directions. It wasn't all of this mumbo jumbo, spread your wings and find your this and that. And I also think, because I just have to say it, she's Bikram trained. So I do feel, I do think that because of, and what it sounds like you're doing this, Bridget, is that one of the things about the Bikram method is it's like commands. It's descriptive, it's like action oriented commands. So it's like stretch your arm forward, right? Very concrete. And that she used that type of cueing in her vinyasa class. And while it was not a Bikram class, it was that effective cueing that I really liked and appreciated, because it made sense. Instead of spiral your chest, it was like move your rib cage. Oh, I could do that.
There's drastically different opinions in operative command versus suggestive language versus choose your own adventure. It's a can of worms. But the clarity, where the core advantage of operative command is clarity. Stretch your arm forward. There's no other way to interpret that. That's it.
Totally. I can see it from both. I like the flow of the vinyasa. Like it, I don't know, you just like feel into it. There's a different purpose in each class, right? That style is that way because of how it was curated and whatnot, and that is the purpose of that class. And then vinyasa is that way because that's how it is, and it is known to be more flowy. I don't know. But
if you want to go down the rabbit hole, we're talking about completely different branches of
that's
yoga.
what I just said. I said they're
No.
two different things.
No, I agree. Completely different in terms of it's more extreme than the public knows, right?
Oh, it's way different.
Flow goes back to Krishnamacharya, and then if you keep going backwards, you end up in Vedic yoga.
Josh
if you're
is
looking
talking
at
yoga babble.
this is yoga history, not just yoga babble. This is yoga babble if I'm teaching a class. But then if you look at Jivamukti, Bikram, anything Ghosh lineage, that all goes back to Yukteswar and Babaji, and that's Kriya yoga. That's like SRF stuff. And it has a different philosophical approach altogether. It actually ends up in Tantra as its origin, not Veda. So the crux of that is one is telling you escape your conscious physical reality to become spiritual, and the other is saying manipulate and control all elements of your conscious physical reality to become spiritual. The core principle, however many thousands of years ago, are not exactly opposites, but are completely different paths to climb the same mountain of spirituality and take samadhi.
And I do just want to say, you can have all the flow, Mara, and still get very clear.
Yeah.
I'm a big flow gal, but you will also know exactly what the hell you're supposed to do with your arms.
That would be really nice. My favorite comment that I've ever heard in a vinyasa class was the one where they're like, feel your breath go in through your lungs and through your fingertips down to your toes. And I'm like, that's not where air goes. That's blood. That's not air. But anyways,
this is spiritual. This is yoga babble shit. But there's the philosophy in pranayama that you have 9 breathing spots in your body, one of which is the cavity in your calf muscles. So I don't know. It gets fucking weird.
it's real weird, real fast. And
Is that a public yoga class with the brand new beginner though? I don't know. I remember the very first ever what's it called? Kriya yoga class that I took, which there you do some weird shit in those classes and it's fun and powerful. But like very first one ever, all that happened was this woman started reading from this book talking about, Kundalini yoga class, talking about the Kundalini energy going up your spine as a snake. And if you're not ready, it could kill you. And then she started banging a gong. And then she's like, spin in a circle. I was like, I don't know what we're doing. But it was, I was 17 years old and no idea what the hell's going on.
oh my God.
So that was my best experience of the teacher had this whole conversation going on about yoga. I'm sure she knew a lot about it, but I was like, what the fuck are we talking about right now?
Also though, with the breath thing, if they said you actually have the pranayama blood, there is one in your calf, so feel it through your whatever, that would make more sense. But instead of just saying it and then just leaving you with it, I don't know.
That's too much of Japanese ham sandwich.
I don't even know what that, I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. I don't know. Anyways. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap on this episode of Spill the Booch. Thank you for hanging out with us and sharing some laughs because let's face it, yoga might be zen, but life isn't always. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own wild stories with us. You might just hear them on the show. Until next time, cheers.